And welcome to the Industry 4 Community Podcast. I'm your host with the most, Walker D. Reynolds. Our podcast this month is sponsored by Portainer.io. And you know what's really funny? You may have noticed that if you go to Portainer's website, okay, Portainer.io, you go to their website, they have made a bunch of changes. They've changed their logo, they've changed the entire website, and they have shifted the focus of the platform to its industrial use case. Most people don't know that Portainer, like the vast majority of people who use Portainer, they use it in like IoT applications, non-industrial. But the fact is the underlying platform itself is really focused on industry, especially the edge components. So I'll talk a little bit more about Portainer later, but a huge shout out to Neil Cresswell, who signed off on Portainer sponsoring the community for this month. So go to Portainer.io and check out the changes to the website. I will answer a quick question here. Everybody asked me my Portainer stack. Okay, so whenever I'm doing development, I haven't actually answered this question yet, so I'm going to answer it now. So whenever I'm doing development and I'm creating a new development environment, so like if you look in my lab here, I don't even know how many hosts I've got in here anymore. Probably like 15 hosts. They're all headless Linux variations of x64 versus ARM. I got Raspberry Pis back there, and then I have a lot of like, heavy duty servers. So whenever I launch a brand new Linux implementation, literally the first thing I install is Docker. And then the second thing I install is Portainer. And so if you look at my infrastructure, I manage every single one of my hosts with Portainer. Whenever I spin up a new development environment, I deploy a custom template that I created. So if you go into like templates, you can deploy Ignition, you can deploy Mosquito Pro. There's a big long list of industrial applications that you can deploy. But I always deploy a custom stack that I created that's actually a template, and you use it in the Edge feature. But so it's Ignition, it is MySQL, it is Postgres, it is a custom Python script that I have that shows the status of the stack itself. It is Timescale, and there is one other one in there that I'm not remembering. Oh, EMQX. So I've been kind of going back and forth between HiveMQ Edge and EMQX as part of my deployment. But yeah, I have a custom stack that I think I shared it with the mastermind students not too long ago. But all right, the goal today is I have some announcements and stuff, and I'm going to talk about a couple of topics. Number one, I want to talk about MCP and agent to agent. I'm kind of sick of it, but there's no avoiding it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about MQTT and Sparkplug. I shot a video last week about MQTT and Sparkplug, which was like a response, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to answer you guys' questions. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat, and Josh will put them up on the screen, and I'll answer them. But all right, Ishani, what's your perspective on using predictive maintenance software versus CMMS? Well, that's really not okay. So that's a perfect example. It's a good question, but it's a perfect example of that's not an apples to apples comparison. Right. So predictive maintenance software is a subset of the function that is CMMS. It's a subset. The Venn diagram of predictive maintenance is going to fall completely inside of the circle that is CMMS. Yes, Travis, Colby, everybody in inductive automation are good people. There's only a couple people I've ever had any, really butted heads with. Here's my opinion on predictive maintenance software. So the issue I've always had with predictive maintenance software, and why it is that we have not that most platforms have not delivered on the promise of predictive maintenance is that they don't accurately tell the customer what is required in order for us to be able to predict failure. Okay. Like what is actually needed. Right. And so the best way to describe it is a predictive maintenance solution essentially creates objects that have inputs, internal registers, and outputs. And all those things are all the parameters that are used for a model to look for the pattern it's looking for in order to predict a negative or positive outcome, right? So think of it as for every type of prediction, we're going to have a function block that's got inputs, internal registers, and outputs, right? In order for you to buy predictive maintenance, where those functions are already pre-coded, you are going to have to map the data, the events, the things that happen and when they happen, and those definitions of the data models. You are going to have to map them to the inputs and the outputs that already exist in the function, or you're going to have to extend the function, or you're going to have to create the function. And very rarely can you map what you have to what they have defined. And that is why you rarely get the predictions you are looking for, accurate predictions of failure. Okay. The better approach to predictive maintenance is creating a digital infrastructure that contextualizes and normalizes the data that you need, and then bolt a model on top of that to predict the failure. This is why Flow software does a much better job of predicting the future, because their functions, the inputs and the internal registers and the outputs to try and predict the future, are malleable, because it's a platform that bolts onto an infrastructure, as opposed to a function block that expects events to be mapped into inputs specifically, and the action to be mapped to outputs specifically in a function. So I am definitely a much bigger fan of building predictive maintenance and then just using the right platform. So when you look at CMMS, there's really only, in my opinion, I was a huge fan of Infor. And I really have pivoted to MaintainX for a couple of reasons. MaintainX really isn't CMMS. They're really a IIoT platform in many ways. They don't hit all connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, but they are very, very strong on the store, analyze, visualize. Super strong in that capacity. And because they're super strong there, they've built in native CMMS functions. They're sort of the CMMS platform. It's like the only one I even look at, because MaintainX is like the only CMMS platform that can take, if I'm going to calculate mean time to repair and mean time between failure, but I also want to use all the events from a downtime event. So from an alarm that raises in a machine to the downtime event that in all the states that we see, the following states we see from that alarm, to the generation of a work order, to an electrician accepting the work order, to the electrician showing up at the asset, to the electrician taking parts out of inventory, to the electrician closing the work order or starting the machine and closing the work order. All those events that we have to coalesce together in order to calculate mean time to repair and mean time between failure, and then use that as part of a much larger maintenance program, both predictive and reactive maintenance. Tools like MaintainX they're the new age CMMS, where it's really more platform, where they're very good at CMMS, as opposed to a suite of functions that someone built and called CMMS. Okay. It's non-deterministic. Robbie's question: can you compare Tatsoft, Ignition, and WinCCOA? Which is a better platform as of now and moving forward? Okay. This is a really good question. All right. Tatsoft, okay, frameworks prioritized native integration of the IIoT platform into the Windows ecosystem. Okay. They did that for a couple of reasons. Number one, now it doesn't mean that it only runs on Windows. It doesn't. There are certain components that require .NET, but it is mostly cross-platform. You can run it in Linux. Okay. What I will say is this: Tatsoft is what inductive automation would have built if they had built in Ignition in 2012, 13, 14. Except inductive automation wouldn't have built it in .NET. Okay, because the old, you may remember the old story is they actually started with some .NET way back when, but the cross-platform part is super important. Frameworks is blistering fast. Like in terms of data to performance in the visualization, the interface with the human being, it's blistering fast. There is nothing on the market that is as responsive in the IoT platform world as Tatsoft. Has the best licensing. It's modular. It entered the market focused on the OEM on the edge. Think of it as Frameworks was originally designed to replace HMIs, but it just so happened they built something that was actually enterprise grade as a platform. I'm a huge fan of Frameworks, especially the latest version. They have a UNS viewer in there now. It's much more developer friendly than it used to be. So in order, my platforms of preference, if we're talking generic, okay, it's going to be Ignition number 1. It's going to be Frameworks number 2. It's going to be WinCCOA number 3. And the only reason WinCCOA is number 3 is because the entry point for WinCCOA is like the engineer. You're not going to teach a mechanic or electrician or a technician to use WinCCOA. Or if you are, the learning curve is going to be really steep. It's an engineering environment developed by engineers for engineers. That's what, as a generic platform, WinCCOA is going to be number 3. As an IIoT platform, that is something I want to connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, and solve. Ignition is number 1 again. The reason why is time to value is very important in connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, and solve. And there's nothing, you can't deploy a stack any faster than you can with Ignition. And if I know Python and I know the basic building blocks of how an Ignition gateway and a project works, I can literally teach somebody to work with Ignition in 15 minutes. And I can get all that training online. So they're going to be number 1 there. If I want to build, however, if you take Ignition, Frameworks, and WinCCOA, and you go, I want one platform that's going to be, the platform itself is going to be the centerpiece of my business. And I'm going to build ERP, and I'm going to build SCADA, and I'm going to build MES. I'm going to do, my data infrastructure is going to live in the platform. It's probably going to be WinCCOA. Ignition would be a very close second there. Very close second. But it's probably going to be WinCCOA. Again, with WinCCOA, I always run into the problem of the learning curve is pretty steep. It's pretty damn steep. And the learning curve is, part of inductive automation's genius was, they made it as easy as possible. Drag and drop, tick a tag, and drag it onto a screen, and you can visualize it. I ask people this all the time. Why did inductive automation put that feature in the platform if no one ever uses it? Except for the first time you drag a tag onto a screen and realize, oh, that's pretty cool. I grab this object and display. It's literally just to show you kind of how it works. It's really just an entry point. No one ever uses that feature ever again. Now, I don't remember the last time I dragged the tag value onto a screen building an Ignition visualization. I don't remember the last time I did it. But at the base level, I can teach someone very quickly that's how it works. And the goal there is that it shows that the tag is the atomic object inside of Ignition. There's nothing like that in WinCCOA. And the way Tatsoft gets around it is Tatsoft has a bunch of demos that are prepackaged in Frameworks that sort of have all the use cases that any reasonable developer is going to want to build. So if I want to learn how to build something, all I do is open one of the prepackaged demos that they shipped, like the MES demo, and I can literally just reverse engineer the screens and build it myself without having to go through these big training sessions. So the answer to your question is, which one is better, Ignition, WinCCOA, or frameworks? Well, it really depends on who you are. Like if you're an engineer, and you're kind of a snobby engineer, like you don't believe that, you use terms like vibe coding. Okay. Let's say you're a vibe. Let's say you call coding vibe coding, which, by the way, no one should use that term. Let me hit pause real quick. Stop using the term vibe coding. Do you know why the term vibe coding exists and who created it? The term vibe coding exists from legacy software developers who wanted to insult people who were using agents to write code. Oh, you're just a vibe coder, right? Don't use that term. Okay. Stop using vibe coding. Okay. Let me back to my point. If you're an engineer who's kind of a snobby engineer, you don't believe in the concept of the citizen developer, WinCCOA is going to be for you. WinCCOA, WinCC Unified, it's going to be for you. For the power user, you can't go wrong. Okay. You just cannot go wrong with WinCCOA. Are there problems I have? Absolutely. Germany makes it very, very difficult to download a piece of software and use it outside of the country of Germany. Makes it impossible. People complain about what we're doing here in the United States with our trade policy. Just go try to use any German product outside of Germany. Okay. Number two, frameworks is going to apply to 95% of manufacturers. It's going to be the best option for 95% of manufacturers. Why? Because of the licensing cost. Yeah, there's no better price out there. There's no better price. And the performance you're going to get, the suite of use cases you can deploy, and then Ignition is still the GOAT. I mean, I'm telling you, like, I install Ignition. Ignition is part of my core stack. I mean, if I've got a problem to solve, I'm fucking 90% of the time I'm doing it in Ignition. I mean, if you want to know the truth, I'm using Ignition and standalone Python more than I ever have in my entire career. Ignition, standalone Python, a unified namespace, React front end for all the visualizations. I'm using it more than anything. Let's do Matt Paris. What gaps have you experienced using Portainer? That's a good question. I would say the biggest problem using Portainer, let's say you're using Docker, you're introducing yourself to Docker and Portainer at the same time, right? So I'm new to Docker and I'm going to start using Portainer to manage. So let's talk about what Portainer is. So Portainer is a container management platform that runs as a container. Portainer runs in a Docker container. Okay. You have the service that you access that allows you to look at all the instances of Portainer you have running on various hosts. And then you can manage the container environments in those hosts from a central location. You go to your Portainer front end, you grab the host that you want to work with, you grab a stack, you either deploy a container, you deploy a stack, and that starts running on the host, and then you can manage it from inside of Portainer. If you are new to Docker and you're using Portainer while you're new to Docker, you're going to struggle with like advanced images. So images that have a ton of environment variables, or they have like really complex routing rules for the network. You're going to struggle with that because Portainer isn't very good at explaining how to translate the documentation for a specific Docker image into how do I make sure I'm living up to the requirements of this image using Portainer. Okay. I would say people struggle there. My biggest complaint about Portainer, and they just changed it, is Portainer is really an industrial platform. It's meant to manage containers inside of manufacturing facilities, But up until recently, no one even knew that. You had to go and turn the Edge feature on. Like by default, if you installed Portainer and you launched it, the Edge menu didn't even show up. You had to go into the settings and turn that on first. You had to turn it on in order for you to have all the Edge features, which are all the industrial features. I would say the other issue I have with Portainer, Matt, or something I kind of struggle with, is I find it is easier for me to diagnose an issue with a running container by going into Docker command line on the host than it is using the front end inside of Portainer for that diagnosis, especially like looking at logs. Like you can view the logs, but I just find it's a little clunky. But the biggest issue most of you are going to have with Portainer is you're going to blame Portainer for problems with a container. And the issue is actually the person who built the container, built the image. Okay. One of the biggest problems Portainer has is that users will attribute a problem with an image to Portainer and not the image itself. Okay. Is Node-RED ready for production system? No. Is FlowFuse ready for production system? Yes. Yes. What do you want to say about Node-RED? So Node-RED is part of my stack. It's one of the things I forgot. Yeah, I think there are 9 containers that get deployed with my development stack, and Node-RED is one of them. I think Node-RED is an outstanding, again, short time to value. I can get a Node-RED server running up quickly. I can get the packages, the node packages I want to use, like OPCOA. I can get those packages deployed very quickly inside a Node-RED environment. I can wire up a workflow, do some data operations inside a Node-RED very, very quickly. I think Node-RED is very good. I use Node-RED to quickly wireframe my data flows, my data and information flows, my transaction management, and my event management. I wireframe it inside of a flow, and I harden it there, and then I convert it into a much more robust solution. Like I won't have it run in Node-RED. I use Node-RED to be the way that I wireframe it and test it. Walker, I've listened to your mastermind step 1.6, building the UNS. It's really nice. Just want to know if we use HiveMQ as an enterprise broker or as a local broker. I use it as both. This is the number one question. The number one question I get is definitely, like, as a technical question, is what's my stack? Probably one of the top 5 questions is what's my preferred broker? And the answer, again, I'm an architect, is the tool needs to fit the problem. Okay. Or the tool I use needs to be the solution to the problem I have. Right. So, when it comes to enterprise features in a broker, HiveMQ is my number one choice. If I'm looking for enterprise security, if I'm looking for horizontal and vertical scale, I think HiveMQ does it best. Okay. 3 years ago, I would not have agreed with that. EMQX would have been my number one choice. HiveMQ has caught EMQX. In terms of throughput, they're about dead even now, but HiveMQ has caught and greatly surpassed them in feature sets. Okay. If I need to deploy a broker I need to deploy it quickly, and I don't ever want to have to visit it ever again, but it's going to be kind of lightweight, then I'm going to use EMQX. I mean, I have EMQX brokers that I spun up 5 years ago that are still running. They are public brokers you guys are using, okay? And they have not been restarted in 5 years. That is God's honest truth. I literally just checked what the public EMQX broker has its literal runtime is 5 years. The fucking host hasn't restarted. It's literally been running for 5 years. And there are the list of clients, the client IDs that are in that broker. There's over 100,000 different unique client IDs running in that broker. Now, is it enterprise grade? Is it's wide open security. I mean, it's so, if I just want something to deploy and I'm set it and forget it, if I'm okay doing some configuration, I'm going to use HiveMQ. If I'm going to do enterprise, I'm using HiveMQ. If my ecosystem is all Ignition, then I'm using distributor. I'm not going to use an external broker. I'm going to use CirrusLink's distributor module inside of Ignition. I actually love that module. And I love CirrusLink's engine. I'm not a huge fan of transmission. I actually use transmission. I use the API in transmission and engine to publish flat MQTT without having to use SparkPlug-B outward. And then another one that I've been using quite a bit lately is Mosquito Pro from Sedalo. Portainer. I would like to make that equivalent to, is Python or JS production ready? Depends on the programming skills and your understanding of the tool. I do have used Node-RED in production sense, but in small apps. Python is absolutely production ready, and so is JavaScript. I don't know if I can think of one implementation where I have JavaScript in production. Python, 10,000 instances of Python scripts that have just run for years and years and years. Yeah. HiByte versus Flow Software versus Litmus. Zach, you want me to answer that? HiByte is best in class in data operations. Yeah, I use PyCharm. I'm a PyCharm guy. HiByte is my and I also use VS Code if I am, like, say I'm developing with a Python backend and a React front end, where I've got to install npm, then I'm using Cursor or VS Code. All Cursor is VS Code. HiByte is gold standard in data operations. The pros of HiByte is that if you look at what they've done in 5 years in data operations, it's just mind-boggling. It's staggering how far they've come. Two biggest issues with HiByte. Number one, internally, you still really have to know what you've built. It's hard to visualize the data streams inside a HiByte. When you go from inputs and outputs and all the steps in between, modeling and flows, it's still pretty hard to visualize. They're moving in the right direction in terms of being able to visualize all the inputs and outputs and everything going on between, all the event management. But you are pretty much still pretty blind to what you've built. That's a problem. Number two, the biggest problem HiByte's got is not even their fault. Okay. And it is, you can get away with doing data ops in other platforms when organizations first start. When you first start with digital transformation, I'm doing proof of value. Do I need a standalone data ops platform? I don't need it, but I should have it. I should start with it. It's like, when I'm first building a house, do I have to put a foundation in? Like, when am I going to find out that I need a foundation? And it's when I get up to the roof and all the weight I've put onto the foundation, starts sinking, and I don't have any footers. I'm just sitting on the dirt. Okay. Then you realize the foundation's missing. Okay. HiByte has a hard time selling to people. You better put the fucking foundation in so the house don't collapse. That's probably their biggest problem. Flow software. I would say this. If you look, by the way, it's funny, Zach put that there. HiByte, Flow software, and Litmus. If you want me to answer to, tell you the three platforms that are the fastest growing and the ones with the biggest upside, the number one there is Flow software. With what Flow is doing, you're not going to be able to avoid Flow. Just like you're not going to be able to avoid using HiByte at enterprise scale. There are some other options out there, but you're not going to be able to avoid Flow. Like where they're going. To tell you the God honest truth, full disclosure, for the Flow is so far ahead of the market, their vision and their technology and where they're going. I've had a chance to see where it's going. They are so far ahead of the market from L3 and above that they are literally the first company in my career that I've considered having an actual partnership with. Like, that's how far ahead they are. Like, Flow, you will not be able to avoid. Okay. Litmus, you know what's funny? I've been doing an educational program for a really, really large OEM. Let's talk about Litmus for a second. So there's a big, massive OEM that hired us last year to do an enterprise training program for them. Basically, we do all the whiteboard videos and all the lessons. We create the curriculum, and then and it's basically a 3-tiered educational program. It's beginner, intermediate, and advanced across 9 subjects using their IIoT platform. They've come out with their own. And when I say platform, it's not one piece of software. It's many that work together to be a platform, and they have an edge device. And on that edge device, Litmus Edge runs on top of that edge device. So the edge device that they're selling to their customers is basically their hardware tech with Litmus Edge running as the operating system. Litmus has a million deals like that. Like, you may not think you're working with Litmus, and I fucking guarantee you are, because I don't know how many partnerships they have, but they are everywhere. Microsoft, Google, manufacturing data, MDC, I think is Litmus. This other company that I'm working with, it is Litmus. 10 other companies that have approached us, it is Litmus. Litmus is everywhere. You're using Litmus and you probably don't even know it. Okay. It's just like with Kepware. Kepware would be white labeled. You think you're using a different OPC server. You're not. You're using Kepware labeled as some other product. That's Litmus. But of that list, HiveMQ, Flow Software, and Litmus, you will not be able to avoid Flow. Flow has the fastest path to the part that everyone struggles with. Okay. And that is converting data and information into business value to take action based on what's going to happen in the future, not just what's happening right now. And that's Flow. And the shit that they're doing, that you just can't, you're not going to be able to avoid them. You're just not, that they are. If I had to place a bet on those 3, I'm placing the bet on Flow Software, and it's not even close. PyCharm is the IDE. Yes. PyCharm is the development environment. Do you Dockerize your Python scripts? Absolutely, Annabelle. 100%. Here's how often I Dockerize my Python scripts. Okay. I can tell you that when you create an image on a Mac, you better make sure you strip the Mac attributes. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to deploy that image using Portainer into Docker with the Mac attributes wrapped on it. That's how many times I have Dockerized my Python scripts. Ran into a problem recently. What is a reasonable size for a spark plug device? Oof. That is totally dependent upon Richard. That's a really good question. Ran into a problem recently. What is a reasonable size for a spark plug device? That is wholly dependent upon the hardware, the horsepower on the device itself. Okay. And the horsepower in your broker and the client that's going to decipher the message. I have had, as a general rule, so let's say I have a PLC, like I just did this. So if you look back here, I have a big demo that I'm going to be showing you guys. So on my board back there, I have a DirectLogix DL260. I have an EasyRack PLC from Easy Automation. I have a Siemens S7-1200. I have a Logix 5555 from Rockwell. I have an Arduino Opta. I have a Zoom Edge from FreeWave. I have an Opto 22 Groove Epic version 1, and then I have the Groove Rio. And you'll notice and then I have a CMT SVR from Maple Systems that has, 300 drivers or whatever on it. It supports Sparkplug. So out of all those devices, half of them support Sparkplug natively and the other half don't. And I use the CMT SVR or I use Ignition. So let's talk about the Automation Direct PLC, for example. in the automation, in that DL260 Automation Direct PLC, I have a simulator running in there where there's like 1,100 variables. Okay. And so what I've done is, rather than taking all 1,100 variables and packaging them as one device, what I've done is I've broken them into two devices, actually. One device is all the C registers, and one device is all the V registers, the variables that you can consume. So I've got all the C's, which are your bits, and then I've got all of the V's, which are my analog variables. And so I broke the PLC actually into 2 Sparkplug edge of network nodes, not just one. And that's one of the ways that I've managed it. So what I've got is DL260_C, DL260_V is the edge of network node. It's a good way of scaling. Have you checked out Faircom Edge or Faircom MQ? Answer is yes, Logan, and I will have something for you guys probably in the next 6 weeks on that. Richard, I'm having some trouble with Sparkplug device birth being 80 meg. Looking for a gut check. Is this insane or is this fine? I wouldn't say it's insane. I'd say it's big. Is it massive? Probably. It's problematic if you're not on fiber or high speed. I mean, I'd break that up. Jeff Rankinen, what are your thoughts on plug and play gateways for Modbus to MQTT Sparkplug, Phoenix Contact versus an edge computer with Dockerized Python for the gateway function? Ooh. Jeff, the way that I would actually do, okay, so talking about the Modbus thing. Let me say this, if it were really, really easy to do a plug and play gateway that would convert Modbus. So the issue with Modbus, for those of you who don't know, the issue with Modbus is that all Modbus is a series of tables that you assign a value to, right? So it's just a matrix, a series of matrix tables. There's nothing in those tables that has any context. You have to have a lookup table, you know, that tells you what the context is of this register. Okay, Modbus itself doesn't have a native lookup table. This register equals this simple definition. You have to map the two together. Okay, so if I create a native gateway, okay, might I be able to scan? I'm going to answer Dylan's question for sure. Make sure I answer that one, Josh. Dylan's and Vast CNC's. A plug and play gateway, Jeff, if anyone was able to do that, John Rinaldi from Real Time Automation, he would have built a gateway that does that exceptionally well. I mean, Rinaldi has built a bunch of Modbus gateways. If it were that easy to go from Modbus to MQTT Sparkplug, there are attributes inside a Sparkplug payload that expect some of the context that you get from the lookup table in the MQTT register set. If you don't have that, that's normally managed in the device. So it's not really easy. Like most gateways, you're going to land the gateway. You're going to connect to the device that's housing the MQTT or the Modbus client that's housing the server, the Modbus server that's housing all the registers. You're going to poll them, and then you're going to combine the context in the gateway, and then you're going to build the Sparkplug Edge and network device and payload. And I would argue, I don't know if I would do that in a gateway. I think I would do that in the software, and I know for sure if I was going to do it in software, to answer your question, I would probably do it in a high byte. Device Master Gateway from Pepperl & Fuchs has recently updated the new firmware from Modbus to MQTT Sparkplug B. So you got that answer too, which I have not seen that update. Let's do Vast CNC next. What gets you excited in American manufacturing? I'm invested in following drones and defense, and we're on the cusp of a rebirth. Sorry for the double ask. It's life sciences. It's life sciences and the Department of Defense. Okay. I strongly encourage you to follow Amy Williams. Amy Williams does a bunch of content on life sciences and IIoT, and she's with Skellig Automation, and they work almost exclusively in life sciences. They don't do just life sciences, but I think Paul O'Sullivan told me once it's like 90% of their work. There are, the FDA and, the US government is really driving the FDA to drive the life sciences sector to go more tech centric. So there's a lot of really awesome stuff going on in life sciences. And, I think this is public now, so I can actually, I know I can say this. So Regeneron did a transformative digital transformation initiative in their R&D department in New York. They're going to be at ICC. So Regeneron's going to be talking about their project at ICC, and I think they're in the Discovery Gallery. Regeneron ended up winning like a major award in Boston as a part of that initiative. And then when you take that and you couple it with Stata in Europe won a major award for their digital transformation. Both of them used unified namespace. When you coupled those two together, all the life sciences industry saw what they did, and we're like, holy shit, we need to go talk to these guys and see what they did. And it's really driven the life sciences industry. They generally follow each other. It's really driven them to become more innovative. But the big thing is Department of Defense. There's a bunch of stuff going on in the DoD where the bidding process for getting a Department of Defense contract has changed. Like basically the administration came in and said, listen, you guys you're going to be working with the best. You're not going to be working with the people who just have approval. And we're seeing an explosion in the defense industry in innovation. And that makes me really, really excited. I want to touch on one other point, and that is there's a lot going on in American manufacturing with reshoring. Like General Electric, so GE Hire, which is their appliances division that Matt Paris works at. I don't know if you guys know, but like GE did something very, very transformative about 20 years ago. There's this famous story where they were manufacturing water heaters in China, and they made the decision to they wanted to optimize the production line. And let's say it was costing $1,000 per water heater to manufacture in China. And they'd been producing it there for 20 years. And they bring the production line back here. I think they brought it to Kentucky. I think it was in Kentucky. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was in Kentucky. They bring it back here and they put the production line right next to the process engineers. So the process engineers are there and their task is to innovate the production line. And so they do that. And they cut the manufacturing cost of the hot water heater in half. And GE was one of the first companies, the appliances division was one of the first companies to realize, holy shit, like manufacturing in the United States, yes, our labor is more expensive, but what we get for that labor, if we organize the business correctly and we enable them to innovate, far exceeds what we get when we offshore. Okay. And by the way, there are the three most reliable appliance brands in the United States. GE is number 1, Whirlpool is number 2, and Frigidaire is number 3. Okay. You want to know the 2 least reliable? LG and Samsung. Look it up. Don't believe me. Okay. Spencer Tibbetts, on the 8.3 front, do you see a benefit of their new Quest implementation versus Timescale? Tiger Data, yucky name. I am struggling with how to place the new historian. All right. So I've been working with somebody behind the scenes on the Timescale implementation with inductive automation, and they've been having some problems in the containerized environments with tag updates per second using Timescale. They are not seeing they should be seeing like 100x return using Timescale versus just native Postgres, but they're basically seeing a one-to-one relationship between Postgres and Timescale. So there's been like a issue behind the scenes. I think it's a threading issue. What do I think inductive automation should be doing with Historian? My personal opinion, I don't think inductive automation is a historian company. Okay. So I think inductive automation, the fundamental issue is if the atomic object inside of Ignition is a tag, okay, and a tag, the unique ID of a tag changes each time you update a tag. I don't know if you guys know the back end, the ORM that works in Ignition, but every time you update the tag, the unique ID changes, and then you got to go look. You can look at the genealogy of a tag. So every time you change a setting, the unique ID of that tag changes, right, in the back end. Okay. Well, when you take the best historians are virtual time series. So they're not storing transactions in a transaction table. They're storing transactions in a flat file. Okay. And then they have these little engines that do compression on ingests, compression to make the file really, really small. And then when you retrieve it, they're putting like this querying tool on top of it, and they're quickly decompressing it so that they can query it and then recompressing it, right? Mapping all of that from an Ignition tag in, because the bottleneck in storing Ignition history is the tag. You know, if I have 100,000 tags, those are 100,000 atomic objects running inside of an Ignition gateway. And an Ignition gateway is a Java virtual machine. And depending upon how you do garbage collection and all that kind of stuff, you basically have a big, you just have a big garbage can that you go sifting through. Okay. That's basically what a JVM is. The Ignition has always had trouble with history. It's been not that you can't historize enormous amounts of data, but the number one question I've ever gotten with Ignition is, which historian do I use? And my answer was always, well, it wasn't always. It became Canary. Use Canary in basically every single implementation. Now, there's a whole other issue with Canary going on now. Canary is going the road of OSI Pi as opposed to, go ahead and get a quote on a Canary license and come back and talk to me, which makes it problematic. At the end of the day, I think the most promising historian, and this is part of the reason I'm so high on Flow software, is Timebase. I think Timebase is a massive game changer in the market. Huge. Yes, Dylan, I agree with you. Which is why the reason I'm kind of brave enough to say this is with 8.3, it really looks like Ignition is setting up to not be the historian company with the API that's being introduced. Ignition with Timebase, Ignition with OSI Pi, Ignition with Canary. Where does LoRaWAN fit in a modern factory architecture? That's a good question. It fits in compressor rooms. It fits in it fits in really remote, not frequently visited locations. The home lab. Will we ever get a Walker home lab tour? Big YouTube niche, good crossover audience. Yeah, I think so. I got a pretty awesome home lab. I'm not going to lie. Whenever, yeah, I'm 100% on Timebase too, Dylan. 100%. Love it. Most people who come here and I show them my lab, they kind of like, what the fuck? By the way, if you see that dresser back there, right there, that wooden dresser. All of those drawers are just full of hardware. I have so much hardware. That people have just sent me to try and stuff. And it's so much of it. I'd say half of it I haven't even opened. Spencer Tibbetts about the LoRaWAN remote slow data. What fun stuff are you working on these days? What has you excited? Anything we would not expect? Yeah. Okay. I've already tipped my hand, but UNS Studio is definitely, I'm super excited about UNS Studio because the way that I've built UNS Studio is not to be a platform, but it's or I think the nature of software is changing. I think the nature of software is changing to the point where what we used to do with software is we would trade. Software used to be really hard to write. And by hard, I don't mean it's still hard to architect. Like that's the difference between, professional software developers and people who just do it on the side. Architecting software is not easy. It's really hard. That's still very hard, and that's still very valuable. Okay. Writing code used to be very labor intensive, and the vast majority of what you paid for was the labor that went into writing the code. And even when you pay 18% per year, you buy an Ignition license, and the general, not just Ignition, any software, your maintenance agreement's generally 18% per year. What you are paying for is the labor that goes into developing new features, bug fixes, et cetera, et cetera. Those costs are coming way down, like way down, factor of 30 at least, coming way down. And there are companies that have have jumped out ahead. Like Microsoft laid off so many people because they were like, okay, the cost of the amount of time it's going to take us to get things done it's really going to reduce the amount of time. We don't need all these people. Microsoft is an example of somebody who cut way too deep, and now they're having to add people back. By the way, Meta had to do the same thing. Meta laid off way too many people, and now they're adding people back. That's the example. Those are your somebody will ask all the time, why does a company like Microsoft lay off too many? Why don't they go slower? Well, it's like, you obviously don't understand how publicly traded companies work. Think about it. Let's say I know there's going to be a major change in labor coming up. Okay. And I've got an earnings call coming up, and I want to say that, hey, we've had record earnings and we just reduced our workforce by 16,000 people. Okay. Well, how will investors respond to that? They will want to buy more of your stock. Okay. And that makes the stock value go up, which makes the value of all the stock that all the employees hold go up. Okay. So even if they know they got to hire people back, did Microsoft know they were going to have to hire people back after they laid off 16,000? Absolutely. They knew. But they said, what we'll do is we'll take the easy cash now, and we'll hope that the market doesn't respond to us adding labor back. We'll just say that we're adding based on demand. Okay. So exciting stuff I'm working on. UNS Studio is definitely the thing I'm most excited about. I had a call earlier this morning where I think I'm going to get involved in this new product that's going to work in like the building automation and the construction industry. My Bible app has been, I'm going to be deploying Easy Bible at easybible.app. I love that. But I would say the thing that would probably surprise you guys that I'm working on is on that board back there. I have two agents actually, running on that board that maps the infrastructure. Every data point, every tag, maps everything, converts it into MQTT, semantically organizes it based on an instruction set I gave it, and publishes it to a broker. And the only thing I have to do is bring the device online. All I got to do is plug in the Ethernet cable. It's pretty sick. Now, am I going to use it in production? No. I want to say this point about the AI thing. Agents, those of you who are freaking out about agents, you shouldn't be. You should be excited. Okay. And I think most people on this call are. But the OT nerd, Walker spot on. It's my prediction that the cost of code is going to zero, but the price of good architecture, especially that which optimizes for agentic flow, will continue to rise. Yep. That's where the value is. That's where, that's one of the reasons that I'm so high on Flow. If you look at what Zach Edier is doing in terms of how he's managing the team there, and managing the development, It's pretty sick. Vast CNC, a local agent running on the board. Yes, it's 2 local agents. They are running on Edge PCs. One of them is shit. I can't remember the name of it. I don't know. It was like $200. I'll post it in the comments. But they're running on 2 standalone devices, and then basically they're monitoring the network. And when I bring a device online, and a bunch of other people have tried it. I just wanted to test it and see like how well would it work. And it works pretty damn well. I mean, it maps all the registers. It literally just goes through and tries everything. That's basically what it does. And then it creates a document. It generates a document that it publishes into the broker that the other agent uses. I can't remember what I was saying. No, not a Jetson Nano. It's hold on. Linux OS for Edge PC. It is. Cannot remember the name of it. It's I think it begins with a Z or something. Yes, it's very exciting times. Let me real quick. I want to go over one other thing, and then I'll answer any other questions. So just as a quick reminder, okay, though we did the MCP workshop. So those of you in Mastermind, we did the MCP workshop in July. We are doing the REST API workshop with Annabelle Velarde. It's actually REST, GraphQL, and SESME prototypes. And then we will close it all up with how the methods in each of these APIs are mapped to MCP tools that agents use. Okay. That workshop is September 29th and 30th. The early bird, for those of you who are not in Mastermind, it ends on September 10th, and you can go to iot.university and see that. In November, I'm going to be teaching MCP and agent-to-agent workshop. So we're going to be doing this at enterprise level. So we're going to be doing distributed agents. So if you took the MCP workshop, we'll be taking that, and we'll be doing distribution in November, plus a couple of other use cases. ICC Prove It, September 16, 17, and 18. So it's ICC, but we also have Prove It at ICC. And last I heard, they're at, I think it's 1,500 people. Don't quote me on that number, but it's a ridiculous number. They have sold a lot of tickets. And then for you system integrators who have signed up for the Integrator Growth Program, we start in October. I think we're going, all of you who have applied for the program, I think we've had meetings with like 21 or so. We've accepted 13. We've eliminated 9 or 10. No, we've eliminated 11. So we've met with 24. So 13 we've accepted into the program. 11 we have eliminated, and then we're going through the remaining. I think there's 30 more we still have to go through. There will be 30 total integrators in that program. The first workshop starts October. So October, November, December, January are the 4 core workshops. And then we start the cohorts in February for 1 year and to scale your business up. One of the things I want to ask you guys. Prove It 2026. So I wanted to run 2 ideas. So first off, just a quick reminder, February 16th to the 20th, 2026 at the Hyatt Regency Reunion Tower in Dallas. It is a massive undertaking. We've literally more than doubled the size of the show. We have 50 vendors who have been booked, or 51. All of the stage presentations have been booked with the exception of 4. So we have vendors we're working with there. If you are interested in coming to Prove It as a vendor and you want to present on stage, there are 4 silver spots left. So title and gold are going to present to the entire audience. The silvers, we're actually going to split the room in half. There's a wall that comes in. You'll have 2 silver presentations going on at the same time. You'll pick which one you want to view. You can watch the other one in a recording. The title and the gold, they'll all be on just one main stage. We have 4 of those silvers remaining, and then we have some of the bronze left. Other than that, we'll be totally booked. If you're in Mastermind, you should have received your code to buy your ticket to the show. We are giving priority to people in mastermind, mentorship, and anybody who attended last year. If you attended last year or you're in mentorship, you would have received an email today that's got your code to get your ticket to go to the show. Okay. Mastermind, your code is in the email. If you want to go, please book your ticket. Please book your ticket. Don't wait. On September 22nd, we go live to the public sale. So anybody will be able to buy a ticket to the show on September 22nd, and the show 1,000% is going to sell out again. Okay. I ran into this issue last year. We're going to run into it this year. We are going to sell out, even though we picked the biggest venue that we could find. Okay. 67% of the attendees will be end users. So there's only 33% of the space is available for people who are not end users. So manufacturers are getting the priority. We will have a VIP event in Reunion Tower. So the circling restaurant at the top of the green ball, there's going to be an event there. I don't know how we're doing signups for that, but I know there's only room for 200 of the 1,500 or whatever people we're going to have. But the idea I wanted to run by you was we are talking internally about doing an event for everyone. And I think we're looking at using Medieval Times. So we just talked about it yesterday. We have to find a place that can handle 1,000 people. And Medieval Times, that arena will hold 1,000 people. So we are thinking about doing an event like that. And the feedback I'd really like, put it in the comments or in this comment here, is that something we want to do? We're going to be there all week. Monday through Thursday is the show. And then Friday is the workshops. So you'll be able to sign up for workshops with the vendors and do training on Friday. So one of the nights we're doing an event where everyone's going to get bussed over to Medieval Times. Is not that far down the road. So we think we're going to do Medieval Times as an event. So if you think that's a good idea, say yes or no. Robert Bush, SAP. SAP is one of the vendors who has requested to be at the event. I can tell you that, like Siemens Life Sciences is going to be there with WinCCOA. The list of sponsors is a who's who for sure. I don't know if SAP has been accepted yet. I know that they're in talks with SAP. Community talks a possibility at the show. Mark Friedman, you absolutely should have a booth. All right. Put sensors on the nights. That would be awesome. Absolutely, Fuse will be there. Fuse 100% will be there. I just want to say that you really should check out Fuse. It's very, very impressive. It is very impressive. I would say the biggest issue with Fuse, if there's any issue, it's obvious the learning curve is kind of long because you're really starting with a blank slate. Like knowing how to really unlock the potential of the platform is going to take you a little bit of time. But it's very, very impressive. Like the way they've architected it is brilliant. It's very similar to the way Litmus is architected. And with that, let me see if I missed anything else. Operations Calling, October 7th and 8th. Yes. I will be teaching an MCP workshop at Operations Calling, Tulip's Operations Calling. On October 8th, I will be teaching an MCP workshop there. So if you're going to be in Boston, come to the show. This year is the first time they're charging for tickets. I'm surprised they didn't charge before because, trust me, we put on a conference. You want to know how much it costs to put on Prove It? $2.2 million. Yeah, on the hook for $2.2 million to put on Prove It. Last year, we were on the hook I had to do like a $1 million bond, and I think the total budget was $1.2 million. It's almost double this year. Yeah, Fuse is awesome. All right. Any other questions? Josh, is there anything I missed? Yeah, I think I answered all of them. Thoughts on 8.3? It is easily the most important release of Ignition since version 7.7. Easily. Ooh, that's a good one, Wolga. Yes, little chats that the community members can have. Yes, there will be. Travis was just talking about it yesterday. There's going to be like these, I don't want to say breakout sessions, but like fellowship sessions. And we'll know more about it when they meet with the steering committee this week. Wolga, how do you see AI being used for connect, collect, store, and process PLCs? This is a very good question. Okay. All you really need to do is kind of look at what Opto 22 did with the latest version of the Groove Epic, where they added in container support on the edge. So Opto 22 had already done kind of what you needed to do with a PLC years ago, where you needed an edge PC coupled with a PLC with IO, right? And then you just go wide open with it. Why more people don't use the Groove Epic? I mean, a lot of people use the Groove Epic. But why it is I don't see it more than I see Rockwell PLCs is beyond me. I just, outside of motion control and outside of large scale, like DCS style distributed architectures for process control, I don't understand why people are still speccing Rockwell. I don't get it. You should be speccing Opto 22. Okay. But Opto 22 really showed us with the Groove Epic kind of how you should isolate compute power. Like this is actually a limitation of Ignition. Most people don't know that, like, it's not a limitation, but it's just a fact, right? You know, a gateway, you know, one of the number one problem that I see people who are new to Ignition do is they don't look at the logs enough, and they don't track the status of their gateway enough to see how the gateway itself is performing. And then what they do is they, you know, add a bunch of device drivers, Ignition device drivers that have a lot of, you know, block errors on poll, and it starts filling the log up and it starts consuming a bunch of compute. And then the whole gateway itself starts underperforming. And the reason why is because the gateway is a JVM. It's an entity all unto itself, right? And so the negative one low performing module can impact the performance of the entire gateway, right? Now, there's pretty much nothing you can do about that. It's just a fact of life. You need to make sure you set your gateway up well enough. I mean, one of the things that Opto did was Opto said, you know, if we're going to do edge PC stuff and a PLC together, then we need to separate out the cores that handle that processing. So we can't have a core that's responsible for handling IO at N scan rate. We can't have that, you know, in a queue for some edge PC function. So we need to break those apart. And so the Opto 22 isolates the edge PC from the PLC. And then the way they connect them together is through the firmware and software layer, right? You know, but now they've added in container support. And so to answer Wolga's question here, I think that the architecture we see in the Opto 22 Groove Epic, that hardware line, is an architecture we're going to see more and more and more. because I'm starting to see it in new hardware, and I haven't seen it for 5 or 6 years. I would say, well, why don't you just have 2 processors on here? Or why is it why aren't you putting an 8-core processor on here and putting 4 cores over here, using 4 cores there, reserving 4 cores there, and 4 cores over there, so they're isolated? Like, why? And I'm starting to see that more and more. And why is that important? To answer Wolga's question about how do you see AI being used for connect, collect, store, and process PLCs? You could deploy the agent in a container on an Opto 22 Groove Epic right now, and you could use an agent for connect, collect, store because it's IEC 61131. So to answer your question, I see it being used a lot more. What niches are you watching closer? I think progressive stamping and die casting are highly needed right now. Yeah, semiconductor is another big one. Semiconductor is a big one that I'm paying a lot of attention to. Politics, what about in Brownfield? Roger that. Rockwell is subpar. If I see a Greenfield implementing Rockwell, Allen Bradley, it's a red flag. Yes. All right, with that, mentorship this Friday. For mentorship, I just did this. I literally just wrote, we're doing, what are we doing this weekend with this Friday? Vaughn told me what it was. I just did the curriculum, but I don't remember what it is. Business intelligence. Thank you. We're doing business intelligence and MCP using agents to generate business intelligence reports in mentorship. Okay. One of the things that I want, some homework for you guys. I want you guys to, if you haven't visited Notion before, if you haven't used Notion AI before, I want you to take another look at it. They've made a big update to the platform, and I've been kicking the tires, and it's pretty impressive. So if you guys want to know something I've been working on that not other people, a lot of people have been using, I've been using Notion almost exclusively under the hood. All right, with that, thank you everybody for watching. Like, subscribe, comment down below.